toxic positivity puts moms' emotional well-being at risk because those suppressed emotions, they do not just go away. Welcome to the Sparkle Project. I'm Emily, a divorced mom of two on my own journey to shine a little brighter. This podcast is here to help you protect your sparkle amidst the chaos and impossible expectations of modern motherhood. If you're a mom ready to choose yourself and shine, you are in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Sparkle Project. Today we're going to be talking about something that really irks me, and that is toxic positivity and how it shows up in motherhood. I think it's a safe bet that we've all had a moment where maybe we're having a hard day and we said something about it and we got the response back, something like, but it goes by so fast, or, but you're so blessed. And of course, these comments are usually well-meaning, good intentioned. Of course, not always, but usually. It's like people are trying to offer a positive reframe to something that we aren't feeling so positive about. But it's not actually helpful. And in reality, it can actually do quite a bit of harm. This isn't about being completely negative with our experiences. Of course, having a positive mindset has its benefits. But when we just cover our hard or heavy or just straight negative experiences with a blanket of toxic positivity, real damage can be done. So what exactly is toxic positivity? Toxic positivity is the insistence on a positive mindset, often to the exclusion of the authentic, difficult emotions one is experiencing. And truly, toxic positivity is rampant in our culture wherever you look. But there's a special flavor of toxic positivity that impacts mothers. And that's what I want to talk about today. We're going to talk about how toxic positivity shows up in motherhood, how it harms moms, and how the impacts can trickle down to our children and the greater community. So let's jump into how it shows up in motherhood. Now, like I said, I would be willing to bet that anyone listening to this has experienced some sort of toxic positivity in their journey as a mother, probably pretty frequently. Ahead of this episode, I posted on Threads to ask moms how toxic positivity has come up in their life, and the answers follow a really similar pattern. Often it's this idea of enjoy every moment, or someday you're gonna look back and miss this. It can also come in the form of at least statements. At least the baby's healthy, or at least your husband helps out around the house. And while all of these comments might seem positive, like a positive reframe to those more negative emotions, the impact is that somebody's saying these things to you when you're expressing how hard something is or how something doesn't feel good. It really just minimizes the actual struggles that you're facing. Like pointing out the good in something doesn't make the bad less true. Being grateful for having a healthy baby doesn't take away from the fact that somebody's birth may have been traumatic. Feeling endlessly grateful for your kids and the love you get to share with them every day doesn't have to come at the exclusion of feeling like you were in survival mode all week. You might also see toxic positivity come up in comparisons with other moms. Other moms have it worse, or this shouldn't be so hard for you because you only have one kid and somebody else has three. And then we add social media to the mix. And of course, on social media, we are presented with these often perfect representations of what motherhood, quote, should be like. And we see so many happy moments without the counterparts of those moments where things aren't going so great. And it just feels like we're supposed to be happy. We're supposed to love every moment of this. It's like put on a smile and act like you like it. Because if you don't, there's probably something wrong with you. Good moms enjoy it. Good moms are happy to be moms. They're happy to show up for their kids every day. It's like as a culture, we don't know how to make room for the ambivalence that comes along with the experience. The fact that we can hold these two separate emotions at once. We can hold the grief and the gratitude. We can hold the anger and the love. We can hold the sadness with the joy. That's true of every single one of us. And yet society tells us that if we're feeling those negative feelings, if we have those not so happy thoughts about any part of the job, then we're probably not good moms. And so it's easier to cover it up with a fake smile and pretend like things are going better than they actually are. And it's really not just externally that we're getting those toxically positive reframes, because many of us actually do this to ourselves too. We've internalized this idea that we're supposed to love every moment, that we're supposed to be endlessly grateful, that we're supposed to be happy as moms. And we start to tell ourselves these same things. You might find that when you want to express a hard time you're having, you instead default to this idea of well, I should be grateful. I wanted this. I chose to have kids. There's like a qualification that happens there. You might end up performing happiness even when you feel completely depleted, even when you feel like you just need a break. And of course, underneath the performance, if you're still feeling those negative emotions, there's guilt and shame that can come along with that. And we end up just shoving it all down because none of that is acceptable. We don't see any of that as acceptable for good moms to feel. So we suppress the frustration, we suppress the grief, we suppress the resentment because good moms don't feel that way. But there are some real consequences to that suppression. There are some real consequences to performing happiness when there's more going on underneath the surface. Toxic positivity puts moms' emotional well-being at risk because those suppressed emotions, they do not just go away. In fact, they often compound and leak out in ways that are less than desirable. We see it show up in irritability, this lack of patience for our kids, the snapping, the not being able to emotionally regulate in a time where it would be nice if we could. We see it show up in withdrawal, feeling like we don't even know how to go to our support systems for things because we can't ask for help. We can't rely on other people if we're not even admitting outwardly or even to ourselves that there are problems underneath. And a lot of times it also comes out in resentment. Resentment for our partners, resentment for our support systems, and even resentment for our children. And on top of that, the emotional masking is completely exhausting. It's a lot of work to pretend that things are going great when they're not. And so on top of the already difficult job of mothering and showing up in all the different roles that you do, there's this added layer of energy spent trying to pretend everything's all good. But there's this additional layer that can happen when we are covering and masking our emotions. It actually prevents us from getting support. So if you are not willing to admit outwardly or to yourself even that you're having a hard time, maybe you're feeling just incredibly anxious with a newborn and a toddler at home. Or maybe the constant runaround of getting your kids to soccer practice and homework done and bathed and to bedtime and it's all falling on you is making you just so burned out and honestly a bit resentful. If toxic positivity is keeping you from admitting that, again, either outward to other people or to yourself, you can't even acknowledge to yourself how you are truly feeling because it feels too shameful, it is nearly impossible to get support for those things. You are unlikely to reach out to a therapist if you believe that struggling with your mental health reflects poorly on you as a mom. You are unlikely to ask the people in your life for help with the kids if you believe that you should be taking it on and happy to do it all. And so the underlying causes of those maybe more negative emotions can't actually be addressed. And again, this is how it compounds because those feelings won't just go away. And now we've limited our access to support that can actually change the situation causing those emotions in the first place. So many moms end up feeling isolated, like they are the only ones who are struggling because they can't talk about it. I can't admit that I cried myself to sleep last night after a really hard bedtime. I can't tell the people in my life that I just need a fucking break because what does that say about me as a mom? And then because we're not talking about this, because we're not sharing our true lived experiences, this becomes a community issue. Because it's not just one individual mom feeling alone in those experiences, it's so many moms feeling like they're the only ones struggling. So while there may be collective solutions to some of the underlying problems, this blanket of toxic positivity really forces us to just keep it all bottled up. And I want to make a really important distinction that I'm not just saying we should all be going around spilling our guts on how hard our situations are. Of course, there are real benefits to having a healthy dose of optimism or a positive mindset in parenting. But we can acknowledge the hard things and still believe that there's hope. And that's a major difference. Toxic positivity asks us to basically deny hard things entirely. Again, it doesn't allow space for the both. It doesn't allow space for the complexity of human emotions and acknowledging that we can be both in love with our children and struggling, grateful and grieving some version of our life we thought we might have. So toxic positivity is a real problem for moms. But there's another layer that I want to get into here, and that is the harm that can happen to our children when we fall into this trap of toxic positivity and pretending everything's okay, even if it's not. Our kids are watching and learning from us at all times. And one of the biggest areas of development that they are taking directly for how we're showing up into the world is the social and emotional learning component of things. Biologically, our kids are wired to read our emotional states. From infancy, they co-regulate with us. That's why when your kid was a baby, they probably had a much easier time falling asleep in your arms than being laid in the crib to do it on their own. So usually they can read what's going on under the surface, whether they're conscious of it or not. When our body and our nervous system and our tone don't match the words that we're saying, our children can tell, and they will trust what our body is doing. So we might be saying the right things, acting like everything's good, we're happy, we've got a smile on our face, but we're anxious and we are dysregulated. They're picking up on that. And that mismatch can cause a lot of confusion and anxiety for our kids. And it also contributes to a lack of trusting what they're sensing, because what they're sensing and what we're saying don't match up. So they're building a lack of trust in themselves and also simultaneously learning that emotions are dangerous or shameful and that it's better to hide them than to let it out. And of course, we don't want that for our kids. Most of us are out here trying to raise emotionally healthy, in tune children. And yet, if we are plastering a smile on our face, pretending we are so good when we're not, we're actually modeling something that we probably don't want to be modeling. It is such a gift to approach our children with emotional honesty. And of course, I'm not saying that we should, in an age-inappropriate way, spill our guts and tell them every little thing that's hard and stressing us out. That would be absurd and potentially damaging and just really not a great move. But we can model naming our hard feelings for our kids. We can model expressing to them that we're having a hard time. I know for me, there are so many times where I am becoming completely dysregulated and I will say out loud to my kids, I'm having a really hard day today. I need to step away for a moment. Or maybe, hey, I'm feeling a little sad right now. Let's just sit and watch a movie and I'll make some popcorn. It's not about putting our problems on them. It's not about giving them all the details. It's not about consistently showing up as a negative energy in their lives. It's about modeling emotional honesty and allowing them to see how their parents are navigating difficult emotions. That's a skill we want them to develop, so let's show them how. We're not always going to get it right. Believe me, I have gotten it wrong so many times. We're all a part of this culture that tells us that we should be happy, we should be grateful, and that anything outside of this positive range of emotions means that we're not happy and we're not grateful. And so even if we know better, our tendency to kind of get wrapped up in that conditioning makes sense. But knowing that there is so much benefit both to ourselves as individuals and to our kids in being intentional not to give in to the toxic positivity that runs rampant, that awareness can help us make different choices in the moment. One of the best ways we can practice emotional honesty in our lives is by building community that allows us to be honest about our experiences and also take in the honest experiences of others. Having a space, whether that is in therapy or with a group of close mom friends, to share what's going on and to not be shamed in response, and maybe even to be met with a few me toos, it can be game-changing in allowing ourselves to show up with that truth, to show up with the full complexity and range of emotions. And the more we can honor what's really going on underneath, the less we will be bogged down by it all. So if there are two things that you take away from this episode, I hope that you recognize that hard feelings do not make you a bad mom. They make you human, and it is perfectly normal to have a range of experiences, a range of feelings at any given time, especially in the role of being a mother, as demanding and as challenging, as truly challenging as it is. And also that when you model that emotional honesty for your kids, you are teaching them that hard feelings are survivable. And that is a skill that they will take with them into the rest of their lives. It is such a gift. So I want to ask you, do you have spaces where you can be truly honest, both with yourself and to others, about the struggles you're having? Because if you're raising kids in 2026, I know it's not a piece of cake. I know that some things are hard, even at the best of times, even when all seems to be going great. there's things. And acknowledging those hard things, acknowledging the difficult, complex, often negative feelings doesn't take away from the good. Thank you so much for being here. If you have not already left a rating and review on this podcast, I would so appreciate it if you would take a moment to do that now. Also, make sure to hit subscribe so that you get the notifications every week when a new episode drops. We'll be back again next week with another incredible guest episode. Until then, keep on shining. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Sparkle Project. Loved what you heard? Share this episode with a friend, and don't forget to leave a rating and review to show your support for the show. We'll be back next week with another episode. See you then.